Hello, welcome to Garibaldi Red. The fixtures are out and the Premier League season feels like a little bit closer. We're going to discuss that and one or two transfer rumours. But I feel like we have to start by recognising the tragic events of Tuesday. I thought long and hard about what I'd say and what I could say that will make any difference. I thought long and hard about the victims. Often we say thoughts are with the families at times like this, but this is so close to home, something which happened on the street so many of us have walked so many times. Barnaby Webber and Grace Kumar were both students at Nottingham Uni, both 19, both talented athletes. I thought of myself now as a 40-year-old with a family of my own. They've had all these great life experiences taken away from them by a sense of slack none of us can comprehend. So too has Ian Coates, a 65-year-old Forest fan, a school caretaker who was just months away from retirement. One of our own. We've spoken many times about the power of unity on this podcast, of standing together in good times and bad, and what that can achieve. This isn't football. It's far more important, but I believe that Nottingham will come together again at a time of great adversity and sadness for everyone, not least the families of those who have been taken. Our thoughts really are with them. Yeah, that's a rough intro, but I don't know. I thought we should say something about it. Obviously, it's a tough few days for everyone. So, yeah, our thoughts really are with everyone. I don't know. There's no easy transition to make going into football chat. So I'll just introduce everyone, then we'll get down to business. Greg, how you doing?
Yeah, well said, Matt. Lovely words. Just a real tough time. Can't imagine what those families are going through. So our beautiful city's there for them. I'm sure they'll get through this somehow. But yeah, well said, Matt.
Mikey Clark, you okay, mate?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks, Matt. Yeah, I echo what Greg said. Well said, mate. I know that was difficult for you to write and articulate, but me and Greg, fully support those words. So nice one, and I'm fine, Matt. Thank you.
Good. Right. Dust ourselves down. Let's get down to business. We'll ask Mikey about his football shirt at the end, as normal. He's got something obscure and weird for us, but we'll get to that later, and we'll focus on the fixtures initially for Forest, then we'll get into the transfer rumours. Let's talk about, I'll put a graphic up for Forest's first 6 games, and we can just talk about what we think is going to happen. Here's the first 6 games for the Reds. Crons. Start at Arsenal away, Sheffield United at home, Man United away, Chelsea away, Burnley at home, Man City away. Not necessarily the fixtures you want when you've been absolutely god-awful away the previous season, but we did finish the season better on the road, and it's a fresh dawn, so hopefully we can be top of the league after 6 games. Greg, you're an optimist. Are you glass half full or glass half empty about that?
You say Christ, but I don't think Jesus is going to help, is he? I don't mind it. We're going to have to play. It's funny because I'm sure last season when the fixtures came out, I was like, oh yeah. And then I think it's a weaker league this season, and you see those fixtures, you go, oh, bloody hell. But we aren't the team we were this season. We've got to get that mental block about the away games out ahead for next season. And we pick up some points out of those away games, and we're in a fantastic position. So bring them on early. Arsenal are still, licking the wounds. Man City hopefully will be hungover. And we can get a result at Man U. There'll be 1 or 2 of them games where we get something. So, and that's all we need if we win at home games.
Yeah, Jack Grealish is probably still hungover, I think. So come September the 23rd, he's enjoyed his wins. Mikey, how are you feeling? Are you more glass half empty, or are you as optimistic as Greg?
No, I'm as optimistic. Mind you, when I first saw them, I thought, well, I said to somebody, is this a joke? Like, has somebody just done that for a laugh? Because, playing all those 4 in a row, and then I think we've got Liverpool straight afterwards is really is a really tricky start. But you have to play everybody twice. And no, I'm glass full, Matt. You've got to play them all. But there's a couple of winnable home games in there, absolutely. So let's be positive. And like Greg said, we were god awful away from home last season, but the back end of the season we did pick up. So who's not to say we can't go away to one of those teams and spring a result? But no, you've got to play them all twice, and I'm very much glass half full.
Yeah, I think obviously it just puts an onus on those 2 home games, which isn't particularly what you want. But we've been so strong at home that you would back us to get, well, I would say at least 4 points, but it feels like you need 6 to lay a foundation for the season, and then nick a point or 2 away from home, or maybe a win. I think Chelsea are going to be much better than they were last season under Pochettino than they were under Lampard. But Arsenal away sort of presents a bit of an opportunity. Everyone's going to expect them to win comfortably. I saw a few of their fan comments saying, 5-0 again after last season, revenge for the home game. So there's certainly hope there. Now, this is a frivolous question because we haven't signed anyone. We don't know what our squads are going to look like. But what's a decent points return, Greg, from those first 6 games for you?
This sounds quite negative. I was going to say 7 points, win the home games and get a point of one of those 3. It's just tough, isn't it? We know that you have to get used to not winning every game, and we did do that, and we still came out of it positive. So just get a decent result at one of those away games and win the bankers that we didn't win last season in the Fulhams and Bournemouths. It's now the Burnleys and Sheffield United. So those home games are absolutely critical for the good start.
What about you, Mikey? What's a solid return?
Well, I was going to say 7 as well, but I hark back to something Fletch said last season where, let's stop trying to look at games in groups perhaps and just look at the accumulation of points. So it's really about how you finish the season and where you end up, obviously. So remember that last season's start, we really struggled. We had 1 point from 7 games, something like that. Now, nobody wants that start again, but it's not the end of the world if we lose those first 4 away games, as long as we pick up the odd point. So I draw your attention to December as well. There's 7 fixtures in December. It's a really heavy month there, and there's some winnable games. So even if we don't start like a train and spring a few surprises, it's a long old season. So I'm going to say, if you ask me now, 7 points, I'd bite your hand off. Win the 2 home games, keep that home form going, spring a result somewhere, and then take it from there, because the next 6 after that, apart from maybe Liverpool away, I think we can win the vast majority of them. So again, let's see where we are 10 or 12 games down the line rather than that initial month, which we all know is going to be really, really tough.
Yeah, I think 6 points is a solid return, because then once, you don't have to go to all the big 6 clubs at the away games. They tend to be the ones that you write off as free hits. And I know fans don't like us saying that. And, I agree, no game's a free hit in this league. But if you get those tough games out of the way, and then you look at our fixtures going into Christmas, there's kind of a run of home games where you think actually we could win. We're confident winning almost all of those, hopefully. Although, like you say, you shouldn't judge games just on paper. But I think lay a decent foundation, go from there, and then take us into the run-in. Before we get to the run-in, any kind of patterns you've noticed, Greg, or any particular games you're looking forward to, either away or at home?
I think it's the cluster of games is it December? There's a right big, because August, I think we only play at home once. Our second home game, something like September the 16th. So there's going to be a lot of fans who only see us play once in the first month and a half or whatever of the season. So I think December, like this year, is critical, and I really like the run-in, but we just need to make sure that we've got a right nice base of points to get us into that run-in, which could push us wherever it needs to push us higher up the league.
Just before I come to you, Mikey, Greg mentions that first home game, and a few fans have noticed, and I think Temps might have noticed, obviously, in the WhatsApp group, the first home game clashes with a 100 game at Trent Bridge, so I wouldn't be surprised to see that one move either a day forward or a day back, depending. It might get picked up for TV as well anyway, so yeah, I wouldn't bank on that one staying where it is. What about you? Any fixtures that stand out for you and are particularly looking forward to, or clutches of games that are pivotal?
Yeah, so I'm just having a quick look now to remind myself. So the one that jumps out for me, obviously, is Everton away, day after my birthday in April. Never been there. I'd love to go there. And we probably owe him for last season. But I think, other than what Greg said around December, there's a couple of weeks in October and November that quite interest me. So you've got Palace away, where we got the points at the end of the season. Luton at home. So you'd like to think we might win that. Liverpool away, which was probably the start of our upturn in fortune away from home. We put in a really good performance there. And then you've got Villa, West Ham, and then Brighton at home. There's absolutely points there in those 4 or 5 weeks. And that is literally just as we build up to the Christmas period. So, like I said at the start, if we start a bit slow, bearing in mind what we have, there's definite opportunity to pick it up sort of 5 or 6 weeks later for that run-in. So those 5 or 6 games really stand out to me. There's definitely points in there.
I'm just going to skirt back. This is a good question from Dan. I should probably have asked. It's an interesting talking point about the approach to those early games, particularly the away ones, I guess. Do you think he has to stick with the kind of mantra that we saw at the end of last season to grind out points, Mikey?
Good question. So I think back end of last season, I was advocating being a bit more front foot and trying to score some goals and attacking it. And I guess we did see that. But then again, some of our best performances have been where we've had the back five and we've maintained the low block and we've won it sort of 1-0. I don't think that's sustainable. It really just depends on the recruitment, to be honest with you. If we've got players that can maybe get more than 25 or 30% possession in a game, certainly away from them, that would really help. But I just think you've got to be realistic, you know. 5 of the first 6 away games are Chelsea, both Manchester clubs, Arsenal and Liverpool. I mean, doesn't matter who we buy, they're going to be really tough. So I'd kind of expect us to probably go with the back 5, sit low, try and nick something. But after that, like I said, a couple of those fixtures that I said just there, I'd like to see us a bit more on the front foot. But again, it comes with where you are in the table, how you're doing at home. It's all ifs and buts, I know. But, 8 points away from home last season. What was it, 1 win or 2 wins? 1 win, was it, Southampton? And a few draws. I mean, it's not really good enough, is it? So if we have anything like that this season, we'll struggle. But I'd like to think that once we get over those first few away games that are really tricky, we'd be more of a front foot team and actually have a go at teams, whether that means a back 4, pushing a bit higher. But we'll see how it goes. It's all ifs and buts, but bloody hell, that's a hell of a start to a season away from home. So no, let's just play back 5 and try and get the odd point, I think.
Does it make you think? I know, Greg, you're thinking of Europe and top 10 finish, but then you look at it and think, oh God, it's such a hard league, isn't it?
Gonna have some great away days in August, though. I've told myself I'm gonna have a bit of a break off drinking in July, so I think August is gonna double it up. But we went Man City early last season and we lost 6-0. We've now got, and it sounds silly, but we've got a gauge, haven't we? We lost 5-0 to Arsenal. We put up some good performances early season against these away teams, and we'll see where we are. We'll know from last year. I went in a bit silly, obviously, but that August is really going to tell us so much about where we are in the season, even if we don't get all the results we might deserve. So I see it now, and I'm glad it's happening the way it is. I just think play them early, play them before they've all settled in, because they're all going to have a load of new players as well. Arsenal, they're not going to be finishing second next season, so arguably they're not going to be as strong. It's exciting. It's why we're in this league, isn't it? For days out like that. So bring them on early whilst the sun's out.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't think. Obviously, there were a few absolute hammerings last season. City, Arsenal, Leicester, weirdly, but I don't think, touch wood, we're going to go and get slaughtered anywhere. I think we're a better team than that, but it's just hard. It's so hard to turn a 2-1 defeat into a 2-2 draw or a 1-1 draw or something. And I think that's the challenge that Forest are going to have to embrace. Just quickly before we move on to transfers, we'll have a quick look at the last 6 fixtures. Just to gauge the run-in. Obviously, so far away, we don't know how good some of these teams are going to be, but it doesn't look too bad on paper, although, again, a lot of these more winnable games are away from home. But Forest finish, for those who are listening or watching, Wolves at home, Everton away, Man City at home, Sheffield United away, Chelsea at home, and Burnley away on the last day. And obviously, we very much hope that Forest don't need anything at Turf Moor unless it's to get into Europe. But hopefully it's just another away day party. Greg, what do you think about those? The last home games are City and Chelsea, which isn't ideal, but it's a decent mix otherwise.
I'd like to send those 2 last away teams down on the day we visit them. That'll be nice, because I don't think much of either of them.
What's your Burnley gripe?
Oh, they're just not. I don't like them. Don't like the away day. At least there might be some cricket on pre-match. Watch at the cricket ground next to the ground, but no, not a fan of either of them. So they can be gone. We can do that to them. And anyone at home we get results against. So it doesn't matter about who we're playing at home. I love the Wolves and Everton games. So yeah, it's good. That's a good running. That is. It's a lot better than last season's running, and look how we performed on that.
Yeah, we were severely lacking grudge matches. Now Leicester have gone down. Not the grudge was more.
Well,
I've
just made a couple. There you go.
Well, Wolves, Forest and Wolves seem to hate each other suddenly, Mikey. So that's a decent one to look forward to, I guess.
It is. It's a good. I agree with Greg. I think it's a good run-in. There's definitely winnable games there, and you'd like to think by the time we play Man City at home with 4 games to go, they'll have wrapped up everything and be in the later stages of European competition. So might rest a few clutching at straws. You never know. But certainly those last 3: Sheffield United away, Burnley away, Chelsea at home, we can turn over. I would have thought. Fingers crossed. But no, I think it looks good. It looks healthy. Let's just hope we're in a strong position. You know what you just said just there, Matt, about. You don't think we're going to go away and get slaughtered. You know that's going to be clipped, don't you? 15th of June, Matthew Davis. We're not going to get slaughtered.
Yeah. I'll note that down for our end of season, omnibus podcast that we always do. Right, I think that pretty much covers the fixtures. There's only so much you can say about playing each team twice. Obviously, Forest's best chance of winning these games is putting a very solid squad together. So we'll talk a bit about transfer rumours. We discussed Brennan Johnson, I think it was last Monday, wasn't it? Where Temps was adamant he's absolutely not going anywhere. But I just think these rumours are going to persist and test Forest resolve. Brentford bidding 30 million to try and get him. We'll start with you, Greg, on the rumour itself, because, on your list of grudge clubs, it's getting ever longer. Brentford are on it. What do you think about that bid?
Brentford are top, if I'm honest. Yeah, they've done that just to try and upset us. They know 30 million's nowhere near it. What I will say, and what I'd imagine, is Brennan's agent must love that, because that must mean, look, there's teams that want him, there's teams that are going to pay him a lot more than we currently are, so offer the lad a contract. And that's what I'd love to see from this. And I think that's the most likely scenario that happens. It benefits everyone, because he's going to be a top player going for top money. And, he's already, you could argue he's already double the 30 million value for a young British player like he is. So give him a new contract. And then if next season he wants to move on, which you'd imagine that might be the optimum time for him, we'll get a hell of a lot more than that pathetic Brentford bid. That, what a waste of time that was. But there you go.
Do you think, Mikey, like Greg says, that's the subtext to all of this? I don't think it's any surprise that clubs are dropping into the press. Is this all about potentially does this end with him signing a new contract, do you think?
Yeah, of course. That's what it's all about. It's the season, isn't it, to do it? So I hate agreeing with Greg, but he's right. I think Brentford is too low bar for Brennan Johnson. If he's going to go anywhere, it'll be a top 6 club, maybe the year after this one, because I genuinely think he's that good. So I tell you what, it does give you a bit of a boost on. So Brentford wouldn't have targeted him if he didn't hit all those metrics that they sort of gauge success by. So by default, having Brentford interested in one of your players is probably a good thing. But like I said, 30 million probably doesn't buy his left leg. So I suspect that unless it snowballs into a bidding war where some of your more established teams come in for Brennan, some of those higher echelon teams, I suspect it'll probably end up with him getting a new contract. Probably well deserved as well. He was brilliant last season. And then the question then remains: does that contract have a release clause? This is just what we have to live with now. We're not in League One anymore. We're not bottom of the Championship. We're not sniffing around for free transfers and getting people's rejects that can't fit in at another club. We're now in a space where teams are starting their bids at £30 million for our players, and that's if I would have said that 18 months, 2 years ago, you'd have laughed me off the show. But that's kind of where we are. So we should play hardball. I think he's got 3 years left of his deal. He's a Nottingham lad. He's no rush to leave, I wouldn't have thought. But no, Brentford are way too low for Brennan in terms of his career, and they'll have to probably double that to even get talking, I'd have thought.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good point about Brentford identifying him, because they need to replace Tony. So they're obviously looking for real talent that can play straight away in their setup. So it is good that Brentford are looking at him, because they are they are strong in the transfer market. So,
and they're fans that talk way too much about their team. They always say they only buy players where they've got a much better sell-on clause, because they reach a ceiling where they know they can sell them no matter how good. And they've done it for years, and it does work. So, yeah, going in at 30 million means they know that in a couple of years' time it'll be worth a hell of a lot more than that. So they've become too obvious. The little games don't work anymore.
A couple of people noting Brennan only signed a contract a year ago, but I don't think that's relevant these days, really.
No.
Players have a good season, especially young players. They're going to want another contract. They're going to be wanting to pay, commensurately with the players that came in on really big money from foreign clubs. That's what their camp will want for them. So I don't think that's a factor at all, personally. An interesting, frivolous question from, let me scroll up and find it, James Vincent. Every player's got a price. If there was a real bidding war for Brennan Johnson, what is his price, Greg?
For starters, it depends who he goes to. I think you just do not sell him to a team around us, no matter what the price. But for me not to be absolutely upset, I think, and it is too early for this, I think you go top 6 club and 80 million next season. He doesn't go this summer. It'd be crazy unless he absolutely pushed for a move, which I doubt he would. You do not sell your most valuable asset this summer when you know he's only just at the start of his journey of value, really, for us, because it's only going higher and higher with him.
Yeah, I think it'd be a real mistake. We just, we saw last season how valuable the squad is. I mean, I know Brennan might actually sit out some of those early away days, but I think it'd be
you have to. Who was the Everton player that went to Newcastle last?
Just googling it now.
Gordon.
45 million was Anthony Gordon's fee, and I think he's worth much more than that. I mean, if I was to put a fee where I wouldn't be gutted, I don't know, 60 to 70 million. Anything less than that, I think would be. I think this is, like I say, just a notional chat. But Mikey, stick a figure on it just to round us off.
Yeah, I said I wouldn't even start talking until it gets to 60 million. But you've got to think about what it will cost to replace him as well. So who you're going to get that offers what he does with his electric pace, ability to play in numerous positions, incredible high ceiling. We know he's going to go to the top, this lad. And who are you going to get to replace him? Because you're going to have to spend half of that on a substandard Brennan Johnson anyway. So I just think we're not going to get better by selling our best players. We scraped it last season, and we've stayed in the Premier League. The first thing we shouldn't be doing is selling our best player, pretty much. I've just been nuts, him or Gibbs White. So I'd like Forest to build the team around those guys. And like Greg said, though, if the season goes on, if he has another good season like he did last season, there's going to be bigger clubs in for him for Brentford, and we're going to get a lot more money than what we're talking about now. So, the guys were mentioning in the comments about he has signed a new contract, and yes, it is irrelevant to a certain degree, but what it does do is it protects that asset. So he's not in his last year, he's not even in his second last year. So there's no pressure on Forest to sell like there is, say, Mason Mount at Chelsea, where he's going into his last year and they'll eventually sell him for whatever fee. We're not in that position. So there's no need for Forest to sell unless a daft bid comes in. But I wouldn't even pick up the phone if it's anything less than 60 million.
No, Jack Grealish is he's an interesting comparison as well. He had, a season back in the Premier League with Villa where he did well, and then he had a second season where he did really, really well, and he got a £100 million move to Man City, and he's a top-class player now. And I don't know why Brennan would go at this stage when he's going to be a regular for Forest, and he's got a great coach who's developed him. Look at the strides he's taken the last 2 years under Steve Cooper. If he keeps here, then there's no reason to think he can't find that next gear and keep going on. We hope Forest is going to be a better team next season, and we saw with Joe Worrell, players get better with better players around them. So I don't see any reason to sell him at all at this stage. Maybe next year in 12 months we're having a totally different conversation, but right now it doesn't make any sense to me. Let's move on to actually an incoming winger potentially that Forest have been linked with. Carlos Borges, 19-year-old Man City winger, can play both flanks. Got 29 goals last season in their under-23s. He's never played a senior goal senior game, excuse me, but he's got 1 year left in his contract, and according to ESPN, he's valued at 11 million quid. I haven't seen much of him. I mean, the videos look really exciting, and he scored a few against Derby last season. Greg, is there much we can say other than it sounds an interesting one?
Yeah, I've been on night, so I woke up late morning to a message off my City mate Craig saying how good he is. I think he swore something, but something about being mustard, and if we don't get him, then he won't be surprised if he signs a new contract. So I've never watched him play. I can't say he's great, but I like the fact that Man City fans telling me how good he is, and he'd expect him to sign a contract if he doesn't sign with us. So there's talk of a loan, isn't there? If we don't buy him, maybe he signs for them and we get him on year for a loan. But I love transfer talk like that. Young players, hungry, wanting to play in the Premier League. That's exactly the type of person I want us to sign.
Yeah, I mean, Mikey, I did look online at what fans were saying when they saw the rumour, City fans, and they were like, he's worth way more than that. He's quality. Don't sell him. That is encouraging. I know it's just a rumour at this stage, but for Forest to be targeting that level of young talent, it is good still, isn't it?
It is, yeah, absolutely. I'd rather that than somebody at the back end of their career that's only going to get worse and is going to command a bigger transfer fee and bigger wages. I think my only word of warning, I guess, on this is, I think we've all seen the YouTube clips. He looks ridiculously fast, but then Diakabi looked fast on YouTube, didn't he? But we all know how
the subject of my favourite ever clip that goes around.
Oh yeah,
first touch for a goal kick.
Exactly, it's brilliant. So I've been a little bit cautious, but it does give me a bit of heart what Greg was saying about people that obviously know him a lot more than us, thinking he's a decent player. Another word of caution, I think Southampton signed a lot of young players last season. They signed a kid called Sammy Edozie from Manchester City. He was in the same team as him. And he, for a similar price as well. And I think he's going to be a good player, but he's just completely out of his depth in this league. So it's just about finding that balance. If we can get somebody like him in, and then a few more maybe senior pros, I don't know, mid-20s, I don't know, people that have kind of been around the block a little bit and can add that bit of experience, the balance and the makeup of the side would give me a lot of heart. Just as I would like to sign 5 or 6 players at the back end of their career, it's the same with signing players at the start of their career. There's risks attached to each. But, like I said before, we're being linked with like quick Man City wingers. That's great. I think but you're going to get a load of this. Honestly, every time we come on here, there's going to be different names. But I think if it's somebody that Cooper's identified and the way we play, which is rapid on the transition, somebody like that would really appeal to the fans, I would have thought as well. Sounds an exciting player, so we just have to watch what happens.
Yeah, that's a good point about pace on the transition. And picking up on the Southampton thing you said, which is a good point. I mean, they went way overboard with young players, but they also got Lavia from Man City, who's a top player, and looks like he's going to get a big move. And one thing City seem to do, they don't mind selling a young player, but they'll put a buyback clause in the contract. They did that with Douglas Luiz at Villa and it expired, but I think they've done that with quite a few of these Southampton kids, or they'll loan them out. So there is a good source to target, I think, City definitely. It's certainly an interesting one, so we'll keep tabs on that. I think that covers most things we were going to say. The other thing to monitor is Evangelos Marinakis was linked with buying Monza in Italy, which is interesting. Maybe get that left back, Greg, that we were linked with. Is it Carlos Augusto? Does something like that sound good?
I don't think we have to be concerned about what he's done there, do we? I think we seem to be the project. The Premier League is obviously the project for him. So if it can help us move players about, and I think it's a positive thing. I mean, Mike is the Italian correspondent, isn't he? He probably knows all about them. So I'll leave that one for him.
Yeah, maybe. Tell us what your shirt is, Mikey. I mean, he hasn't actually bought Monza yet, as far as I can tell. I was reading up on it before we came on, but it's one that's in the pipeline. What shirt are you wearing today?
So today, guys, is FC Sorrento, so Serie D's finest. So if we start signing players from them, I'll be really worried because I watched their training and I think I could probably get in their team. So it's me and one of my other random tops. So I think just going back to Greg's point on a serious note, it's just about the balance and makeup of the squad, and I'm probably more interested in who leaves if I'm honest. Because if you look at, I think I said this the other week, you've got Brennan, Nico, Danilo, I think somebody else that now have to be registered in the 25. So we're going to have to ship a few players out. And as long as we end the transfer window with a balanced squad with cover for every position, so obviously some jump out like left back, we've only got Toffolo, I think. Oh, Richards, but who knows about him? As long as we've got cover, I think we'll be okay. But it is really exciting. I'm genuinely excited about the next few weeks. I just think that we won't go as mad as we've done previously. And I know this is Nottingham Forest, and I know people even go, come on, it's Forest. We're going to sign 15 players and let 20 go. I really hope we don't. I hope we let the ones go that we need to go, and then we sign 4 or 5, and that's it. Because, we were talking earlier on about the fact we got stuffed at the start of the season. It's because nobody knew each other. There was a load of new players. They were just trying to find each other. We're not going to have that this season. We've got the makeup and the balance of that team, and all it needs is 1, 2, 3, 4 key quality players being added to it, and they can hit the ground running at the start of the season, which gives me even more optimism that we don't need to be afraid of any of these fixtures at the start. We can go away and compete because they're not 11 strangers anymore. The team unity we showed at the back end of last season should carry on into this season. So let's all be positive. Let's all look forward to what we're going to get through the door and out the door. And I reckon we're going to have a great season. I know we're not doing predictions now, and I keep changing my mind, but I might be nearer to Greg than Temps this year.
One final point before we go that a couple of people have rightly raised in the comments around the African Cup of Nations, which I think might deprive us of a clutch of players for up to 4 games around December time. That's a concern, Greg, isn't it? We've got Niakate, Awonyi, Bolly, Kouyaté, Aurier. I mean, that's a clutch of important first team players there we're going to have to mitigate for potentially.
Yeah, I didn't realise it was 4 games. I thought that went into the international. We've got a 2-week international break.
I think that's like if they win it or something. I think that might be the absolute worst case scenario. But I think it's going to be at least 2 games. That's
why we're going to be building a squad, aren't we? Like every other top team in the Premier League, they're all going to be losing a hell of a lot of their good players for the Premier. So let's hope we play someone who's lost 5 players instead of our 4. Everyone's going to be in the same boat in that situation, I'm sure of it.
Yeah. I think it just shows we probably do. We've said this already. I think we need another number 9 in through the door to cover any Awonyi injuries. But that's one to bear in mind. Right. Before we go, any other business, Mikey? You want to add?
Nothing really. I was just going to mention. I didn't know whether we're going to touch on it. Just contracts as well for some of these players. So Yates has got 2 years left. Warren McKenna 1 year. I just think maybe we need to look after those players first. But I'm sure that's all in the pipeline. I'd love to see our club captain tied down for a few more years, and then obviously make a decision on some of the others as well. I think we spoke about it last week. But no, just echo what I said before. Really positive time to be a Forest fan, and let's just look forward to what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. And I can't see them selling Johnson or a Gibbs White. I'll be astonished. And you can clip that as well, Matt, and play it back to me when they've sold him in 2 weeks. I'm sure that will be the case.
Greg, anything from you before we go?
No, nothing from me for once. Just look after each other and enjoy your summer. Say hello to your neighbours if you've never said hello to them before, because we're a lovely city, aren't we? So appreciate it.
Yeah, good point. Right, just to mention the live shows next week as well. Bring a couple of pound coins with you because we'll should have an auction on the day. I don't know if I mentioned that. And there's food there anyway. Obviously, the NAV takes cards, so put your money over the bar. They'd be very grateful, and hopefully, we'll see as many people as possible there on Wednesday and Thursday. I might be able to release a handful of tickets for each show. Probably on, oh God, it's my kid's school calling, I think. Probably on Monday or Tuesday. So, yeah. Right. Thanks very much, everyone. Greg, thank you.
Yeah, see you all next Wednesday. My drinking ban doesn't start till after that, so I might have a couple.
Mikey, see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week, and see everybody next Wednesday and Thursday for the live shows.
Yeah, come and say hello if you're coming. Otherwise, we've got a normal podcast on Monday with Simon Bristow from Our Glorious Bands talking about his book, and we'll have a few other interviews through the summer, plus all this transfer chat. So have a good few days, everyone. Echo what Greg said about life is short and we should all make the most of it, I guess. The last few days have shown us. So we'll see you all soon.